The arena of Dravis was alive with sound. Thousands of alien voices echoed under the great metal dome, their cheers shaking the ground. For the people of this world, combat was more than entertainment. It was pride, tradition, and a way of proving power. At the center of the attention stood Valara, their undefeated champion. Tall, armored in shining plates carved with the symbols of her clan, she carried herself like royalty. Her confidence was unshakable, her reputation flawless. Valara had crushed dozens of challengers from rival clans and distant colonies, and never once had her blade tasted defeat. Her movements were strong, her strikes fast, her reflexes sharper than the eyes of the birds that circled the skies of Dravis. The people loved her, but more than that, they feared her. No one wished to stand against her, until she made a mistake. It began when her pride grew too loud. One evening after another easy victory, she declared before the crowd, "No human could ever stand before me. Their bones are soft, their minds slow, and their courage weak. If any human dares, I shall finish them in less than a breath." The aliens roared in laughter, their cheers carrying her words across the city. To most, it was only a statement of truth. Humans, after all, were newcomers to the wider galaxy. They were small compared to the towering races of Dravis, and their worlds lacked the harsh conditions that bred natural warriors. Many believed they only survived by luck or by hiding behind machines. Valara's boast seemed safe, but her words traveled further than she expected. Far across the sector, in a quiet corner of a human colony, a warrior named Marcus heard them. He was not the strongest of humans, nor the fastest, but his life had been shaped by endless conflict. From the time he was young, he had fought in battles on war-torn frontiers. He had seen allies fall, seen enemies stronger than him rise, and yet he had learned to endure. To Marcus, combat was not about pride. It was survival, patience, and discipline. When he heard Valara's challenge, he did not laugh. He did not ignore it. Instead, he felt something stir within him, not anger, but a calm determination. He knew humans were often underestimated, and he knew what it meant to prove them wrong. Quietly, without any grand speech, Marcus sent his acceptance. The news shocked the alien world. A human had agreed to face Valara in the great arena. The people of Dravis filled the streets whispering of the coming duel. They expected a quick and humiliating defeat for the human. Some said it would be over in moments, others joked the human would not even survive the first strike. Bets were made, laughter echoed in the taverns, and excitement grew. On the day of the duel, the arena was packed to its highest level. Flags waved, horns sounded, and the names of Valara and Marcus were shouted across the dome. Valara entered first, her armor shining under the artificial lights, her weapon gleaming like fire. She raised her blade, and the crowd cheered as if the fight were already won. Then Marcus entered. He was simple in appearance compared to Valara. No heavy armor covered his body. He wore only light protective gear, enough to guard his vital parts, but not slow his movement. In his hand, he carried a plain steel blade. It had no glowing marks, no alien craftsmanship, just the honest weight of human forging. The crowd laughed when they saw him. He was smaller, quieter, his steps calm rather than dramatic. But though they laughed, Marcus did not seem troubled. He walked with steady confidence, his eyes fixed on Valara. He did not bow, nor boast. He only stood with his weapon ready, as though this was nothing more than another test of survival. Valara looked at him and smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Human," she said loudly enough for the crowd to hear. "You will regret stepping into this place. You are brave but foolish. I will end this quickly." Marcus did not reply. His silence unsettled her for a moment, though she would not admit it. She expected fear, hesitation, or at least nervous words. Instead, she saw calm eyes watching her, studying her as though he had already fought this battle 1,000 times in his mind. The announcer raised his hand, and the crowd quieted. The rules were simple. The duel would continue until one could no longer fight. No outside help, no weapons beyond those they carried. It was combat at its purest form. "Begin," the announcer shouted. Valara struck first, her movement a blur. Her blade cut through the air with the force of a storm, aiming to crush Marcus in one blow. The crowd shouted, already imagining his fall. But Marcus moved, smoothly, almost effortlessly. He sidestepped, letting the blade crash into the ground beside him, and the arena floor cracked under the force. A ripple of surprise spread through the audience. Marcus had not only avoided the strike, he had done so calmly, without panic, without wasted motion. Valara frowned and pulled her weapon back. She attacked again, this time faster, her blade sweeping across with deadly accuracy. But once again, Marcus blocked with precision, his steel meeting her weapon with a ringing sound. He was not stronger, but he used the exact angle needed to redirect the force. The crowd went silent for a moment. This was not what they expected. The human was still standing. Valara felt a spark of irritation. She had wanted this to be quick, to prove her words true. Yet already in the first exchange, Marcus had shown something she had not predicted. He was not reckless, not clumsy. He moved like someone who had learned through countless battles that every step mattered. For Marcus, nothing about this duel was surprising. He had studied her movements from the moment she entered. The weight of her weapon, the rhythm of her steps, the way her strikes came with power but left small openings. He had seen warriors like her before, confident, mighty, and certain of victory. He knew how to fight them. The duel had only just begun, but already the crowd sensed a shift. This would not be as easy as Valara had promised. Marcus stood with his blade steady, his breath calm, his eyes sharp. He had no need to speak, no need to boast. His silence was its own weapon, and Valara was beginning to feel its weight. The arena floor still echoed from Valara's failed strike. Dust rose where her blade had slammed into the stone, but Marcus remained standing, untouched. His calmness disturbed her more than she wished to admit. Valara lifted her weapon again, her muscles tense beneath her armor. She had fought countless duels, and every opponent before had either fallen quickly or broken under the fear of her speed. Yet here was this human, smaller and lighter, meeting her strength with simple precision. He had not even tried to strike back yet. He was only watching her. The crowd's laughter, which had filled the dome at the beginning, grew quieter. Some still shouted Valara's name, but others whispered in curiosity. Could this human truly last longer than a few moments? Valara let out a sharp breath and rushed forward again. Her strikes rained down in rapid succession, 1, 2, 3 blows, each heavier than the last. She used the weight of her entire body, her blade slicing through the air with deadly speed. But Marcus shifted smoothly, deflecting with the flat of his sword, twisting his wrist at just the right moment to redirect her energy. The sound of steel against steel rang like a drumbeat, echoing across the dome. Sparks flew as the weapons clashed. Marcus did not push forward, but he did not retreat either. His steps were small, precise, conserving energy. Every block was calculated. Every movement was deliberate. Valara growled under her breath. "Fight me properly, human," she snapped. But Marcus remained silent. His eyes never left hers. He was studying, measuring, waiting. To the audience, it seemed strange. Most warriors fought with noise, with roars, shouts, and the pounding of their weapons. Marcus fought with silence. His blade spoke for him, his movements controlled and efficient. This difference unsettled Valara far more than the strength of his arm. She leapt back for a moment, reassessing him. Sweat formed beneath her armor, though the fight had only just begun. This human's patience was dangerous. He did not chase. After her, did not fall into her traps. Instead, he stood ready, as if every action of hers was part of his plan. Valara decided to change tactics. She darted to the side, circling him quickly, trying to confuse him with speed. Then with a sudden burst, she swung from a low angle, aiming for his legs. The crowd gasped, certain the strike would land. But Marcus shifted his foot at the last instant, his blade catching hers in a perfect block. The sound of metal clashing thundered again. Before Valara could recover, Marcus pushed slightly. Not enough to overpower her, but enough to upset her balance. She stumbled half a step, her pride stinging more than her body. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. "He's holding her back. He's still standing. Valara's teeth clenched. She was not used to this. Every other challenger had fallen, quickly, yet this human made her look as if she were struggling, and worse, he had not even struck her once. He was showing the galaxy that her power alone was not enough to end him. The silence of Marcus cut deeper than any insult. With frustration burning inside her, Valara attacked again, faster, stronger, her blade slicing arcs of silver through the air. Marcus blocked each one, his arms steady, his body flowing like water around her movements. His expression never changed. Then, for the first time, Marcus struck back. It was not a wild attack, nor a reckless charge. It was a simple movement. One quick step forward, one clean slash aimed at her shoulder. Valara barely deflected it in time, the edge of his blade sliding off her armor with a spark. The crowd gasped louder than before. The human had attacked, and it had been dangerously close. Valara's heart pounded. She realized something. Marcus had been holding back. He had been testing her, studying her, letting her waste energy while he conserved his own. His first strike was proof that when he chose to attack, it would be precise and deadly. For the first time in years, Valara felt a flicker of doubt. But she could not show weakness, not in front of her people. She roared and swung with all her strength, her blade striking with enough force to crack the ground once more. Dust rose, the sound echoing like thunder. But when it cleared, Marcus was not beneath her strike. He had stepped aside, calm as ever, his blade pointed at her with quiet readiness. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were watching in silence, their cheers replaced with anticipation. The duel was no longer a performance of Valara's strength. It was becoming a true contest. Marcus moved lightly, his blade tracing small circles in the air as he watched her. He was patient, waiting for her next mistake. Valara, breathing harder than before, realized this duel was not like the others. She could not simply crush him with strength. She would need to be clever, controlled, and precise, qualities she had rarely needed before. She raised her weapon once more, forcing her breathing steady. "You are better than I thought," she admitted through gritted teeth. Marcus gave no answer. He only shifted his stance, his silence carrying more weight than words ever could. The tension in the arena grew thicker. The first clash had ended, but the true duel had only just begun. The sound of clashing steel still rang in Valara's ears. She stood tall, her chest heaving beneath the weight of her armor. Sweat trickled down her brow, though she tried to hide it. The duel had not lasted long in minutes, but it had already tested her more than most battles ever had. Marcus, the human warrior, still stood before her, calm, steady, his blade angled with precision. His silence was unbearable. To Valara, silence felt like mockery. It was as if Marcus was telling her without words that he had no need to boast. His eyes held focus, but not arrogance. He was watching her, studying every move as though she were an open book. For the first time in her career, Valara felt her opponent was not reacting to her, but guiding her into mistakes. The crowd sensed it too. No longer did laughter fill the dome, instead whispers spread like fire. The human still stands. He moves like he knows her every strike. Could he win? The thought was shocking to them, almost impossible. Yet none could ignore what their eyes had seen. Valara decided she could not let this continue. She had to break his rhythm, force him into a corner before his patience destroyed her confidence. She adjusted her grip on her blade, muscles tightening, and then she lunged with renewed fury. Her strikes came faster than before, sweeping arcs and brutal overhead blows that shook the ground. Marcus met them all. His sword shifted at perfect angles, deflecting just enough to protect himself without wasting energy. His steps carried him just out of danger, always where her blade wasn't. But then something subtle happened. Marcus began to move differently. His footwork grew more aggressive, his blade positioning sharper. Instead of simply defending, he started to press small openings into her guard. Valara realized with alarm that his fighting style was changing. He was no longer testing her. He was adapting. He struck low at her side, forcing her to drop her guard. Before she could counter, his sword was already swinging toward her upper chest. She managed to deflect it, but only barely. The shock of the impact rattled her arms, and she felt her grip falter for the first time. The audience gasped. Valara's confidence wavered. Marcus stepped back, not chasing her, but his silence carried the message clearly. I can reach you whenever I choose. Valara's heart raced. She tried to calm herself, but doubt had entered her thoughts. She was used to fighting opponents who relied on strength or speed. Marcus relied on patience. Every moment she wasted energy, he grew stronger. Every mistake she made, he noticed, and Marcus noticed everything. He saw how her strikes grew slightly wider as frustration built. He saw how her breathing became heavier inside the weight of her armor. He saw how her pride pushed her to attack when she should have waited. To him, the duel was a puzzle, and she was solving it for him with every reckless move. Valara swung again, aiming high to crush him. Marcus ducked low, his sword slashing across her leg armor. The strike did not pierce, but it rang loudly enough for the crowd to hear. It was a warning. He could hurt her if he wished. The whispers in the arena grew louder. He touched her armor. The human touched her armor. The people of Draves had never seen Valara pushed so close to defeat. Their champion, their pride, was being cornered by someone she had mocked. Valara staggered back, fury rising within her. But beneath the fury was fear, something she had not felt in many years. She realized Marcus was controlling the pace of the battle. He had let her wear herself down. He had tested her strength, survived it, and now he was beginning to turn the fight in his favor. She clenched her teeth and tried to steady her voice. You are skilled, human, but you cannot match me forever. Marcus gave no reply. His silence was heavier than words. Valara lunged again, forcing herself to focus, but her attacks grew sloppy. Marcus waited, and at the right moment his blade met hers with such precision that her weapon was deflected to the side, leaving her exposed. His sword tip stopped inches from her chest plate before he pulled back. The arena fell silent. Every eye was on the human. Valara's breathing grew ragged. She had been seconds away from losing. If Marcus had pushed forward, it would have been over. She knew it. The crowd knew it. And that knowledge cut deeper than any blade. But Marcus lowered his weapon. He gave her space, as if telling her, you still have a chance. That act unsettled her even more than defeat. Mercy was something Valara rarely showed, and to have it shown to her by the very human she mocked. It burned inside her chest. She attacked again, desperate to prove her strength, but now her movements lacked the calm she once had. Marcus moved like water, flowing around her strikes, waiting for the right moments to counter. Each of his blows was clean, sharp, and deliberate. He was no longer just surviving, he was winning. The crowd, once loyal to Valara, now roared in awe of Marcus. They shouted not her name, but his. The human! The human! Their voices echoed across the dome, shaking her confidence further. Valara's pride crumbled piece by piece. She realized the truth she had refused to see. Marcus was not weak. Humans were not weak. They fought differently, not with endless power, but with endless resilience. They did not depend on natural strength, but on discipline, intelligence, and courage. Her arrogance had blinded her, and now she was paying the price. As the duel pressed on, Marcus continued to push her closer to defeat. Each strike of his blade was a reminder of her mistake. Each deflection reminded her of her wasted energy. Each step he took forward reminded her that the tide had turned. Valara had once thought beating a human would be easy. But now she understood the truth. Facing a human warrior was not about strength. It was about endurance. And Marcus had endured everything she had thrown at him. The turning point had come. The question was no longer whether Marcus could survive. It was whether Valara could. The duel had shifted. What began as a performance of Valara's power was now a test of her endurance. And Marcus, the quiet, steady human, was winning that test, The crowd could see it clearly. Their champion, who once stood proud and confident, was breathing heavily inside her armor. Each strike of her blade grew less precise. Each movement carried more frustration than skill. Meanwhile, Marcus still looked calm. His breaths were steady, his posture controlled, his eyes sharp. He had waited for this moment. He had studied her patterns, her timing, her habits. Now he moved with purpose, forcing her to waste more energy. When she struck with strength, he redirected her blow with simple precision. When she tried speed, he slowed her down with well-timed counters. When she tried to intimidate him with words, he gave silence that cut deeper than insults. The arena echoed with cheers, not for Valara, but for him. "The human! The human!" the people cried. The voices of thousands shook the dome. For the first time in her life, Valara heard the crowd admire someone other than her. Her pride screamed at her to strike harder. To end this before she was humiliated further, she gripped her weapon with both hands and charged, unleashing a furious series of attacks. The air trembled with the force of her strikes. Sparks flew as metal met metal. Yet Marcus never faltered. He blocked when he needed to, dodged when it was wiser, and countered when the opportunity arose. His movements were not wild. They were not dramatic. They were simple, efficient, and perfect. And then he began to press forward. For the first time in the duel, Marcus stopped waiting. His blade moved faster, sharper, cutting into her rhythm. He struck at her side, forcing her back. He aimed at her shoulder, forcing her to twist away. He cut near her arm, forcing her to retreat step by step. Valara realized with shock that she was being pushed, not by brute strength, but by precision and control. The crowd roared louder, their excitement rising as Marcus advanced. His movements carried the weight of something more than a duel. They carried history. In that moment, Valara saw something she had never considered. When Marcus moved, he carried the spirit of his people. Every slash of his blade held echoes of human history, their endless battles, their survival against impossible odds. She saw the resilience of a species that had learned to adapt, endure, and rise again no matter the enemy. Valara, in her pride, had dismissed humans as weak. But now she understood that their strength was not in towering size or alien power. It was in their will, their ability to fight on when others gave up, their courage to stand even when the world called them fragile. Marcus struck again, his blade sliding along her armor with a loud ring. She staggered back, her chest heaving. The gasps of the crowd filled her ears. She could not believe what was happening. Her strikes, once unmatched, now seemed clumsy compared to his precise movements. She tried to roar, to intimidate him with sound, but Marcus gave her nothing in return. Only silence, only the calm, focused eyes of a warrior who had seen worse and endured worse. His stillness was a storm hidden beneath the surface, and Valara felt it pressing down on her. The crowd began to shift their chants. Marcus, Marcus. His name, once unknown to them, now thundered across the dome. Valara's pride cracked under the sound. She had always fought for the cheers of her people. She had always fought to prove her superiority. But Marcus fought for something else entirely. He did not seek their voices. He did not need their approval. He fought with the quiet strength of someone who carried more than himself. Every movement of his blade reminded Valara that humans had always been underestimated, and every time they were, they rose higher than expected. Her strikes slowed, her legs grew heavier. Marcus saw it. He adjusted his steps, moving with more pressure, testing her guard. She struggled to keep up, her armor now feeling like a prison of weight. Each clash of their swords sent pain through her arms, and then, Marcus made a choice. He struck with a sudden burst of speed, his blade flashing like silver lightning. Valara blocked, but too late. His sword tip cut across her shoulder plate, leaving a visible mark. The crowd exploded with cheers, their voices deafening. Valara froze, her pride shattered. No one had ever touched her in combat like that. She stared at Marcus, her chest heaving, her heart racing. She expected him to gloat, to smile, to speak. But he did nothing. He simply lowered his blade and waited for her to continue. His silence told her everything. This is not about pride. This is about truth. And the truth was clear. He was stronger in ways she had never understood. Valara felt something stir inside her chest. It was not just fear, but respect. She realized Marcus was not only fighting her. He was fighting against every word she had spoken, every insult she had thrown at his people. He was showing not through boasts, but through action, what it truly meant to be human. The crowd knew it too. They saw in Marcus the spirit of a species that refused to break. His endurance, his patience, his control, it was a lesson for all who watched. Valara raised her blade again, but her strength was fading. Marcus moved forward with steady steps, his blade sharp, his eyes calm. She understood now. The duel was no longer about whether she could defeat him. It was about how long she could stand before the truth of humanity's strength brought her to her knees. For the first time in her life, Valara felt the weight of humility. And for the first time, she wondered if losing to Marcus was not humiliation, but honor. The air inside the arena grew heavy. The crowd that once cheered Valara's name now waited in silence, their voices caught between fear and wonder. The duel was no longer a display of alien pride. It had become a lesson, and Marcus was the one teaching it. Valara's chest rose and fell sharply as she struggled to control her breathing. Her arms ached from the weight of her weapon, her muscles trembling beneath her armor. Sweat dripped down her face, stinging her eyes. She could not understand how she had reached this point. She, the champion of Dravus, who had defeated countless foes with ease, now stood on the edge of collapse. And yet, Marcus still stood firm. His stance had not weakened. His eyes had not wavered. He looked as though he could fight for hours more, while every breath Valara took felt heavier than the last. His silence continued to press down on her. It was not arrogance. It was discipline, and it broke her spirit more than insults ever could. Valara tried to summon her pride again. I cannot fall to a human, she told herself. The people were watching. She had promised an easy victory. She could not allow her words to be proven false. With a roar, she raised her blade high above her head. She gathered all her remaining strength, every ounce of her fury, and charged forward. Her strike was meant to end it in one blow, a final act to reclaim her honor. The sound of her blade cutting through the air echoed like thunder. But Marcus was ready. He did not panic. He did not retreat. Instead, he watched, waiting for the exact moment. As Valara's blade came down, he stepped to the side with perfect timing. His sword rose, not with wild strength, but with precise control. The clash rang out, steel against steel, but this time Marcus's movement carried more than defense. He redirected her strike, letting her own force pull her off balance. Valara stumbled, her weapon crashing into the ground, sending cracks across the arena floor. Dust rose in a cloud around them. For a heartbeat, the crowd thought Marcus would strike immediately, ending the duel while she was exposed. But he did not rush. He moved with calm certainty, stepping into position. When the dust cleared, the sight froze everyone in silence. Marcus stood with his sword at Valara's throat. His blade gleamed under the arena lights, steady and unshaking. Valara's own weapon was trapped beneath the weight of her mistake, buried in the stone floor. She could not move. She could not defend. One clean strike would have ended everything. The entire dome held its breath. Valara's eyes widened, her chest still heaving. She felt the cold edge of Marcus's blade near her neck, and for the first time she truly understood defeat. Her pride shattered completely. She had been beaten, not by brute strength, not by speed, but by patience, discipline, and calm control, and then Marcus did something no one expected. He lowered his sword. Slowly, with deliberate care, he stepped back and gave her space. He did not press the blade forward. He did not seek to humiliate her further. He had proven his point, and he had done so without cruelty. The crowd gasped, their voices rising in awe. Mercy was not common in the arena of Dravus. Their champions, usually fought until only one stood, but Marcus had chosen differently. His restraint shocked them more than his victory. Valara staggered back, stunned by the gesture. Her pride told her she should be angry at his mercy, but her heart told her something else. Marcus had not spared her out of pity. He had spared her out of respect. His silence now felt less like a weapon and more like honor. The arena erupted into thunderous cheers. "Marcus, Marcus," the people cried. His name filled the dome like a storm, echoing far beyond the walls. The crowd, once loyal only to Valara, now honored the human who had shown strength without arrogance and victory without cruelty. Valara fell to one knee, lowering her head. The weight of her defeat pressed down on her shoulders, but strangely, it did not feel like humiliation. It felt like truth. She looked up at Marcus, her voice breaking as she spoke. "I was wrong," she admitted, her words carrying across the arena. "I thought humans were weak. I thought you could never stand against me. But you have shown me strength I cannot deny. You have beaten me not only with your blade, but with your spirit." The crowd went silent again, listening to every word. Valara pressed her hand against her chest, a sign of respect in her culture. "From this day forward, I will speak differently of humans. You have my respect, warrior." Marcus gave no reply, only a small nod. His silence, once sharp, now carried the weight of humility. He turned away, lowering his weapon, and walked calmly toward the edge of the arena. He did not raise his arms in victory. He did not celebrate. He had no need to. His actions had spoken, louder than any words. The crowd continued to cheer his name, their voices shaking the dome. They had witnessed something they would never forget. A human underestimated and mocked had stood against their champion and won with honor. Valara remained on her knee, watching Marcus leave. She felt the sting of defeat, but also the warmth of respect. She had learned a lesson that day, one she would never forget. Strength was not only about power. True strength came from patience, endurance, and the ability to rise again and again, no matter the odds. Marcus walked out of the arena as silently as he had entered. The duel was over, but the story was only beginning. For across the galaxy, tales of the human warrior would spread. His victory would not just change Valara's view, but the view of all who once saw humanity as weak. And though Marcus himself sought no glory, he had earned something far greater, respect that would echo among the stars. The echoes of the duel lingered in the great arena long after Marcus lowered his sword. The crowd still roared his name, their voices rising and falling like waves. For the people of Dravis, it was as though the galaxy itself had shifted in that moment. Their champion, Valara, undefeated until this day, had been bested. And not by brute force, not by alien technology, but by a human they had mocked as fragile. Marcus walked slowly toward the exit, his plain blade still in hand. He did not raise it in triumph, nor turn to soak in the adoration of the crowd. His silence, steady as ever, carried its own power. To him, this was not about glory, it was about truth. Behind him, Valara remained on one knee, staring at the ground. Her weapon still lay embedded in the cracked stone floor where her final strike had failed. The sound of the people chanting Marcus's name filled her ears. For years, those same voices had shouted only hers, but strangely, she did not feel bitterness. She felt a strange sense of relief that the truth had been revealed, and that she had lived to witness it. Slowly, Valara rose to her feet. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her spirit was no longer burdened by arrogance. She walked forward, her armor dented, her pride humbled. When she reached Marcus at the edge of the arena, she called out to him, "Warrior!" Marcus stopped and turned slightly. His eyes met hers, calm as always. Valara raised her hand and placed it across her chest, a gesture of respect in her culture. "You spared me when you could have ended me. You fought with patience and strength I had never imagined. I mocked your people, and I was wrong. From this day, I will carry your name with honor." The crowd gasped at her words. Valara, the proud, Champion had never spoken such things to any opponent. Her voice was heavy yet filled with sincerity. Marcus gave a simple nod, saying nothing. His silence carried more meaning than speeches ever could. Then he turned once again and left the arena. That night, the city of Draves was alive with conversation. In every tavern and marketplace, the duel was the only topic. The people spoke of the human warrior who had stood against their champion. They repeated every detail: how he moved, how he remained silent, how he lowered his blade when he had already won. Some retold the fight with awe, others with disbelief, but none could deny the truth. For the first time, the people of Draves saw humans not as fragile outsiders, but as warriors with a different kind of strength, a strength that was quiet, enduring, and impossible to ignore. Valara herself walked among her people the next day, her head lowered in humility. No longer did she carry herself with the arrogance of an untouchable champion. When questioned about the duel, she did not hide her shame. Instead, she told the truth. He was patient when I was reckless, she explained. He was calm when I was loud. He was disciplined when I was desperate. I thought defeating a human would be easy, but I learned that true strength is not always loud or mighty. Sometimes it is steady, silent, and unbreakable. Her honesty only deepened the respect the people began to feel, not just for Marcus, but for humanity itself. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, word of the duel spread. Messengers carried tales of the human warrior who had stood against the champion of Draves. Traders repeated the story on distant worlds. Soldiers whispered it in barracks, and rulers discussed it in their halls. Each retelling added to the legend, until Marcus's name reached corners of space he himself would never see. To many, the duel became a symbol. It reminded them that strength did not always come from size or power, but from will and discipline. It reminded them that humans, though new to the stars, were not to be underestimated. And to humanity itself, Marcus became a quiet hero. Though he sought no recognition, his victory gave his people something priceless: respect. Other species who once mocked them now looked at them with caution, even admiration. The galaxy began to realize that humans were not fragile. They were dangerous in their resilience and honorable in their victories. Marcus, however, did not see himself as a hero. He returned to his small colony with the same calm silence that defined him. When asked about the duel, he spoke little. "I fought as I always do," he would say, with patience. To him, it had never been about fame. It had been about truth, and proving that humans were worthy of standing among the stars. But whether he wished it or not, legends formed around him. Children on alien worlds pretended to fight like the silent human. Young warriors studied his style, trying to imitate the patience he had shown. Even Valara herself began to train differently, no longer chasing victory through brute strength alone. She spoke to her students about humility, reminding them of the human who had bested her. In time, the duel was remembered not as a moment of Valara's defeat, but as a turning point in galactic history, a moment when an entire world realized that humans were not weak, a moment when arrogance gave way to respect. Valara's name remained known as a great warrior, but always tied to the story of Marcus. And Marcus's name became legend, a quiet figure whose silence had echoed louder than 1,000 war cries. The story spread with a simple lesson: do not underestimate the human spirit. In the end, Marcus lived quietly, far from the noise of the galaxy that now celebrated him. He carried no crown, no title, only the memory of a duel that had changed more than his own life. Valara never forgot him, nor did her people. They remembered the silence, the patience, and the final moment when he could have ended her but chose instead to show mercy. Respect had been earned, not just for Marcus but for all of humanity. And in the deep halls of Draves, where the echoes of the crowd still lingered, Valara often repeated the words that became her lesson. She thought beating the human warrior would be easy, but she was mistaken.